In a quiet corner of Greece, a monastery became a house of shadows, where devotion was twisted into terror. Abbess Mariam Soulakiotis, known in whispers as Mother Rasputin, ruled over life and death with an iron hand. And tonight, we uncover the chilling truth about the abbess whose authority masked murder, coercion, and betrayal. In the quiet town of Keratea, a young girl was born who would one day command fear and devotion alike. Around 1883, Mariam Soulakiotis entered the world in a modest household in Keratea, Greece. Little is known of her childhood, though her early environment would become entwined with her later life. The home she grew up in would eventually be absorbed into the monastery she would one day lead. Before joining religious life, Marina worked in a factory, a glimpse into the disciplined, regimented existence that would later define her leadership. By the turn of the century, she embraced the monastic path, taking the name Mariam and entering the Greek Orthodox Church. Under the guidance of Bishop Matthew Carpathicus of Verstina, she learned the strict rules and ascetic practices that would shape her personality. Mariam became a trusted aide to Matthew, known for her devotion and discipline, earning respect and authority among her peers. Following the Church of Greece's adoption of the new calendar after 1923, Mariam aligned herself with the old calendarist movement, led by Matthew, who by then styled himself Archbishop Matthew of Verstina. In doing so, she entered a religious faction that existed outside the official church hierarchy, a position that would give her latitude to build influence and consolidate control. This early period established the foundation of Mariam's character. Disciplined, devout, and remarkably persuasive. She learned to command obedience, to enforce rules with unwavering authority, and to cultivate loyalty among those around her. These traits, when combined with ambition and cunning, would later manifest in a far darker form. One that blurred the line between devotion and coercion, and ultimately, life and death. What began as service to God became a web of absolute control. In 1927, Mariam, alongside Archbishop Matthew, co-founded the Panagia Pefkovounogiatrissa Monastery, known in English as the Covenant of the Virgin in the Pines, located between Keratea and Kakitalasa. The monastery was intended both as a spiritual center and as a source of financial support for the old calendarist movement. Preparations for its construction had begun years earlier, with Mariam acquiring land in secretive transactions that would later be questioned by authorities. From the beginning, Mariam's influence was profound. By 1939, as Archbishop Matthew's health began to fail and his devotion took him into extended fast and isolation, she assumed the day-to-day administration of the monastery. She managed resources, oversaw nuns, and controlled access to the convent, gradually establishing herself as the ultimate authority within its walls. Mariam's rise was subtle yet deliberate. She enforced strict aesthetic routines, demanded absolute obedience, and cultivated an aura of spiritual infallibility. Followers came to see her not only as a religious leader, but as a moral arbiter, the person through whom God's will was interpreted. Her influence extended beyond the monastery. Wealthy families entrusted her with their estates, and over 400 individuals eventually lived under her control. Following Archbishop Matthew's death, Mariam officially assumed the role of abbess. Contemporary accounts describe her austere appearance, often wearing the epimandolin and black apanokalimavkin, reserved for high-ranking nuns. Yet behind this facade of piety, she wielded absolute power, her authority unchallenged. The monastery became both sanctuary and prison, a place where faith and fear coexisted in uneasy balance. By the late 1940s, Mariam's authority was complete. Every aspect of life at the monastery was subject to her control, setting the stage for the acts of coercion and cruelty that would later shock Greece and the world. Behind the walls of piety, death quietly crept through the monastery's halls. Mariam Soulakiotis' crimes were rooted in manipulation, coercion, and a rigid ascetic regime. She targeted wealthy women who joined the monastery, compelling them to transfer property under threat, coercion, or physical abuse. Those who resisted were sometimes murdered. By the early 1940s, Mariam had dispatched monks to seek potential benefactors across Greece, building a fortune of hundreds of houses, farms, gold, and jewelry. The monastery also operated as a tuberculosis treatment center, promising care to those unable to afford medical attention. But medical negligence became a tool of control and death. Doctors were rarely allowed to provide treatment beyond signing death certificates. As a result, over 150 patients perished from neglect, confined to high-altitude cells without sufficient food, care, or medicine. Survivors recounted starvation, physical abuse, confinement, and relentless psychological pressure. Notable victims illustrate her ruthlessness: the Baca family, who were confined and starved after transferring their property; the Panagiotopoulos couple, who died under similar conditions; and nuns such as Theodote and Marina, beaten to death following accusations of misconduct. Mariam's reach extended beyond the monastery walls. Her coercive influence enveloped both residents and outsiders drawn into her orbit. Yet, she maintained a facade of piety. To followers, she was a spiritual guide. To authorities, a devoted abbess. Her ability to blend devotion with cruelty enabled her to operate for decades largely undisturbed, with victims' deaths often dismissed as unfortunate consequence or divine will. Mariam's methods were methodical, chilling, and entirely deliberate, a calculated exercise of power that blurred the lines between religious authority and mortal judgment. Her crimes were a fusion of faith and terror, cloaked in ritual and ascetic discipline, making her both a respected spiritual leader and a figure of unimaginable darkness. The walls that hid her crimes would soon be breached by the law. On the night of December 4th, 1950, over 85 police officers, accompanied by legal authorities, raided the monastery. They found malnourished women and children, some confined in basements, neglected and ill. While initial charges focused on illegal olive oil exports and tire imports, anonymous complaints and witness testimony soon expanded the case to include murder, torture, fraud, and negligent homicides. The investigation revealed the full extent of Mariam's control. Over 500 individuals had willed property to the monastery, and authorities suspected a disturbing pattern of deaths connected to coerced donations. Families reported that relatives had entered the convent for treatment or spiritual guidance, only to vanish or die under mysterious circumstances. Her trial spanned 3 separate proceedings from 1951 to 1953. She was convicted of 7 premeditated murders and numerous negligent homicides. Despite the severity of the charges, Mariam remained calm, praying and crossing herself before judges. Her lawyer argued that property transfers reflected customary vows of poverty, not criminal intent, and highlighted her service to Archbishop Matthew and the old calendarist movement. Even as authorities sought justice, Mariam retained fervent followers. Supporters staged protests demanding her release, and even plotted against religious leaders to pressure authorities. The juxtaposition of public criminality and private veneration underscored the complex grip she had on those around her. A blend of fear, reverence, and unquestioned obedience. The investigation and trials revealed not only the scope of her crimes, but also the limits of the law in confronting religious authority, intertwined with coercion and death. Mariam's fall from power was public, dramatic, and indelibly recorded in Greek history. Even in death, her shadow lingers over the monastery she once ruled. Mariam Soulakiotis died in Avarov prison on November 23, 1954, while serving a 14-year sentence. She was buried at the monastery grounds near Archbishop Matthew, the mentor who had shaped her rise. Her legacy remains controversial. Historians largely accept her guilt, yet some Matthewite followers continue to venerate her as a saint. Estimates of her victims vary dramatically. 27 confirmed murders and over 150 negligent homicides, with some authorities suggesting the number could exceed 500. Her crimes reveal a combination of coercion, manipulation, extreme asceticism, and calculated cruelty. Psychologically, Mariam exemplifies authoritarian control, moral blindness, and the use of religious authority to dominate terrify, and profit from others. The monastery continues to operate, though old calendarism is no longer illegal. While modern nuns venerate her memory, contemporary scholars view her as a cautionary figure, a reminder of the dangers when charisma, religious authority, and unchecked power intersect. The deaths, coerced donations, and enduring myths surrounding Mariam reveal how faith can be twisted into fear and how devotion can mask exploitation. Her story serves as a dark study of human psychology, spiritual authority, and social vulnerability. It reminds us that behind appearances of piety and devotion, cruelty can hide, cloaked in ritual and respectability. Mariam Soulakiotis' life and actions continue to provoke reflection, fear, and fascination. A shadow that persists long after her death. The story of Mariam Soulakiotis is one of devotion, ambition, and darkness intertwined. She wielded faith as a weapon, enforcing obedience, coercion, and control that led to countless deaths and immeasurable suffering. Yet, for some, she remains a saintly figure, a paradox that underscores the complexity of belief, power, and human vulnerability. Her rise from humble beginnings in Keratea to the abbess who commanded absolute authority over hundreds is both mesmerizing and terrifying. Her crimes, coerced property transfers, physical abuse, and neglect reveal a mind capable of blending spiritual devotion with ruthless calculation. The monastery she led remains active, a living reminder of her enduring shadow and the questions her life continues to pose. Mariam Soulakiotis' story reminds us to scrutinize power, even when cloaked in holiness, and to recognize the thin line between reverence and fear. If this journey into darkness left an impression, remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more exploration of history's darkest hearts. And as always, don't forget to look beyond the fog.